Nick Rowley is a leading authority on tackling climate change, having served as an advisor to former British Prime Minister Tony Blair.
He's also worked closely with Australian climate experts, including Tim Flannery, and he joins us now from our Sydney studio. Thanks very much for your time. Before we talk about the politics, what happened yesterday, I just wonder, what do you think the public's appetite is for this ongoing discussion about which mechanism to use and how to move forward?
Oh, Paul, well, it's an enormously confusing space at the moment. I mean, we've got acronyms coming out everywhere. We've got the CEFC, we've got ARENA, we've got RET, which you've just been putting a report together on. It's a very confused picture in terms of what all of these different bits, how they all fit together and what effect they might have. I think generally the policy space around all of the clean energy measures does fit together quite well, but the process within our Parliament is now so confused that anybody looking at this would wake up today and go, well, sorry, I don't quite understand what all of this means. Are we going to have a carbon tax, aren't we? And how is this all going to wash out and what difference will it make? Exactly.
So people are confused. It's almost impossible for casual observers, even as we've seen earlier, political experts, people that watch this and try to nut it out. So being how hard it is to work out what the position might be, say, a couple of months from now, how did we get here, and why has that message become so muddied?
Look, we got here for a whole number of different reasons, but let's not dwell on that. Let's actually think of the content of the policy and the potential outcome. Now, what happens in Parliament and in the Senate is very hard to predict, but it looks like we're no longer going to have a price on carbon in Australia. We've got the Palmer United Party and hence now the Parliament committed to an emissions trading system, but with zero price, which is enormously strange. I mean, that is rather like saying, let's have a World Cup final, but there won't be a ball. Oh, the ball will come one day, we'll play one day, and you just end up having 22 people standing on the pitch wondering what's going to happen.
Quickly, just tell me what you think about yesterday then and Clive Palmer's role in this.
Well, look, Clive Palmer's role is possibly, you know, a matter for Clive Palmer. I mean, he's a politician who's almost anti-politics. He needs to constantly be stroking the cat up the wrong way, or else people will very soon lose interest. His intervention with former Vice President Al Gore was in my view, utterly bizarre to see a former Vice President of the United States standing up in the Great Hall of our own Parliament providing backup for the policy position of any politician in the Australian system. That just seemed like a very bizarre form of theatre. But how all of that might wash out is extremely interesting, because beyond all of these acronyms, beyond all of this political cabaret, there is really important work and investment going on. Through the Clean Energy Finance Corporation, you are creating a more carbon efficient economy, and that's not just big polluters, that's also places like abattoirs that are just simply becoming more efficient in the way in which they use electricity and energy. It's organisations like the Australian Renewable Energy Authority, which now looks as if it will be maintained, not abolished as the government wanted it to be. And that isn't just about sanctimonious green gestures. That is about really, really professional, hard-headed commercial decisions being made, not only about how we might be able to create new renewable energy technologies here in Australia, but how even places like miners in Weipa can no longer be dependent on the international diesel price, but can actually generate their own electricity using low-carbon, highly efficient solar to help make their plants more efficient.
Well, Nick, if what you're saying is true, then why do we need all this discussion in Parliament?
Well, because we live in an over-governed, muddled democracy. That's why. And we have a government that actually doesn't, I think, believe in the risks associated with climate change. They believe that they can sort of make it go away, but certainly if you look at the deftness of foot required, the arguments that need to be made even behind the closed doors in the corridors of Canberra, is that it looks like our polity, it looks like the result of the last Australian election is going to make that a great deal harder than they thought.
Do you think industry's making its changes along the way will reach that fairly low emissions reduction target anyway by the year 2020?
Well, I think you've got to ask me that in maybe 2 weeks' time, and we'll have a look at what the policy settings are. I think that's very questionable. We don't have a particularly ambitious emissions reduction target of 5% by 2020 in Australia anyway. But 2020 is, you know, it's only 5 or so years away. It's not very long. And if we don't have a price within our economy, and we don't have a coherent policy coming out of the direction, the direct action policy that Minister Hunt has responsibility for, I don't know whether we really are going to be able to hit those targets.
And how do you feel about that direct action policy?
Well, I've got a whole set of different questions, which I probably won't bore you with, but I think that for mine, it actually boils down to a question of political will. It seems ridiculous for the current government to say, well, our direct action policy is very much like Barack Obama's approach to tackling climate change. Only in one respect, is that Barack Obama also, you know, he couldn't get a carbon price through the Senate. But when the direct action policy was announced, there was one Minister of the Crown actually making that announcement, and that was Greg Hunt. All the actions that Barack Obama has made have had a whole lot of different, very, very important members of his cabinet involved in putting that policy together, and he has exerted an enormous amount of political capital on that. That is something that you will not see from the current Australian government under Tony Abbott.
And you mentioned the renewable energy industry. Is it being damaged at the moment, or is it forging on?
Well, it's forging on. I think it's doing as best it can. It needs to wait until all of these policy settings actually come out of the washing machine that is the Senate at the moment. When it comes out and we hang up the washing, we'll have a look at it and see whether it can dry and whether it can be crisp and look any good. Yeah. So they're waiting to see. But this confusion is not just a confusion for the electorate. It's not just a confusion for the people watching your program. It's a confusion for people who are actually involved in serious business decisions, serious investment decisions. And I suppose, like all of us, they'll be saying, well, let's hope they can all sort it out, and at the end of it, we'll have a look and see what the policies are and how we can best manoeuvre within those policies.